But I do believe we're in a pretty exciting time, and we could radically change the way that we do things. And it's probably more ambition that will drive that than anything else. Is there an ambition in the industry? Because I think the opportunities are tremendous. So we kind of taken the approach that we should be at least pushing the envelope as a company on that ambition. And how successful we are or will be is, yet to be seen. Just to put some scale to it, we're a small company. So you talked about Agnico's 1.6 billion ounces. We're headed towards 300,000 ounces. So I consider myself to be lucky to be in the same room with Sean as a sense that my ambition would become an Agnico Eagle someday, but we're obviously not that big. So the four things I would just touch on. One is, what is digital transformation? And then talk about drivers to digital transformation. And what does fully integrated digital enterprise really look like, potentially? And again, that's my view. It's not necessarily a world view of that subject. And what are the key issues that mining companies face in transforming their businesses? So just a survey said that 88% of companies are out there with this topic, digital transformation, and only about 25% of them actually understand what it really is. So we're one of those 88% who really probably are just trying to understand what it really is. What's it really mean to the business? So we're no different. And I think if I were to say what's the focus, though, I would look at it as really it's about transforming the way we create and manage value. I think if that stays the focus, I think then you've got something. I think if it stays on a technology focus, I think you're not likely to get there. So just quick about us. The only thing to say is we're small. I said already 300,000. We work in stranger places around the world. Bulgaria is not well known, but that's where our flagship asset is. We're building our second mine there in Bulgaria now. It's an open pit. And we have a smelter in Namibia and some interests in different parts. Serbia, we have a development stage project there as well. And I think the only thing I'd say different about us is strategy-wise, we intend to create value through innovation, and it's an intentional strategy. And it's very declarative in our case. It sits in our vision statement and so on. So I think everybody, we talk about the mining industry, it'd be very simple. I would boil it down to, we're just not generating the kind of returns we need. So it's a challenging industry, as Sean shared, and probably getting more challenging. Low returns are the biggest concern I think the industry has, because if we don't generate decent returns, it becomes an irrelevant industry relative to others in terms of investment interests. So that's not a good thing. And then I think execution track record is probably another key concern I would say we can change, both on builds and operate. And then I think those two being the big ones I might touch on, but basically there is a bit of a burning platform, I think, for change. And so what's the opportunity and what's driving the fundamental opportunity? It's just everybody knows it, just as a change in the speed of everything that's happening, processing. Everything's, cost of data processing in the last 10 years has increased by a factor of 60, and bandwidth's improved by a factor of 40, and cost of data is gone down by a factor of 1,000. So these are just numbers that just say that it's an accelerating pace of technological innovation, particularly on the computer side, that's driving all these new things. That's the underlying driver. And then, so all that means is the things we heard this morning. There's faster and faster new things coming on the market that allows us to consider in our business. So what is digital transformation? I would say it's really, you could argue it's a technology trend, but I would say it's more about a core business enterprise level opportunity in terms of most businesses now have to take that whole digital aspect and figure out what it means to their business from an enterprise basis. You can see it in banks, you can see it in healthcare, you see it in other industries, probably more prevalent in mining, but all industries in some way are trying to figure out how all of this really affects their business model and the way that they do their business. And that's kind of what I think it really is. It's just there's so much opportunity. We have to figure out how to use that opportunity differently. So data is now the new resource, right? It used to be ore was the resource. Now it's data. And opportunity for increasing productivity and lowering costs, accelerating innovation, new disruptive business models. All those things become possible. Creating new challenges for data. The new challenges that go with that obviously are things like data access, security, ownership of data, privacy. And you can see those things are coming out in new regulatory regimes from governments around how that gets dealt with. So data is driving a lot of this new age of digital. So hyper-awareness, if you looked at it from a point of view of how is it affecting you as a person, individual, I think it's really, it's obvious what's happening. Everyone's walking around with a cell phone and collecting all their information, and they're basically hyper-aware of what's going on globally, they're hyper-aware of what's going on in the news, hyper-aware of what's going on in their homes, hyper-aware of what's going on in the markets. I mean, everything is sort of now and by the minute, and that is the trend. And then we're changing the way that we receive services, changing the way that we probably will see transportation. And so all of these things are being driven by that fundamental digital transformation. And I think the big one also now merging virtual with real. So no longer is it just the physical world, the virtual world are coming together in one way. So what are the implications to society? And I think this is obviously not an industry topic alone, because it affects every aspect of human, social, and political and economic activity. So this is really transforming society in general, not just businesses. And the control of data and IP, intellectual property, and knowledge will determine the economic and social and political power. And you can see that with the Mars. If you look at the Mars, what is that all about? That's about business. That's about the country recognizing the importance as well, that if we aren't out in front in this area, we're left on the sidelines. The future jobs and the future opportunities for the country's growth and for the country's, I'll say, economic well-being really falls away because we're no longer in that space competing. So it's huge. The game here is not the game, but the stakes in this are huge. And we as a mining industry, if we're going to be the leading Canadian, mining in Canada is going to be leading, we have to be out in front on this area big time. Governments obviously play a very important role in constructing, limiting, and enabling data-driven economy. So our government has to be out in front in that area as well, so that we have, encourage the innovation, encourage the investment, encourage the activity, and play a bigger role in the global picture. And government support of innovation will either create differential rates of economic growth and new economy jobs, or they won't because governments don't take that lead role. So what are the differences in a data-driven economy versus, what it's been, I call a non-data-driven economy? The one thing to recognize is that big data, which is basically meaningless to people, really is a gold mine for computers. So where we wouldn't care about big data as humans, but computers can eat through big data. So the key is recognizing that that's the case. Knowledge is no longer accessible by all. Now it's those who can take advantage of the sources of data and develop the algorithms that come out of that knowledge, and then market and sell that. We'll gain the commercial opportunities that are created. So now we're making money off of data, not off physical commodities and products. Significant upfront capital to exploit big data, but it's a very low cost to scale it. So those who figure out the keys to that are the ones that are going to be the winners because they can scale that globally very quickly. It doesn't cost much to scale once you have the basic skills. You see that with all these I'll say technology companies like Google and Facebook and Uber. First, to capture and exploit commercialization. The first ones to capture and exploit it are the ones that have the advantage, and they are the ones that tend to become the superstar companies. And again, that's obvious. You can see that happening all over the place. And new forms of trade and exchange are happening. So all of a sudden, as I say, it's not so much physical commodities anymore. It's now this intellectual property knowledge around data and how you're using data. And then obviously the new challenges around systemic risk due to vulnerabilities in information infrastructure and cybersecurity concerns that are now driving things. So these big companies, they're the ones that have become the biggest companies in the world. And what are they all about? They're underpinned by capacity to collect, organize, control, and commercialize data. That's what they're doing. And all of those have that similar theme. And now they're the largest companies. The big companies of the past are no longer the big companies. Data and IP are becoming, an essential part of business strategy for all businesses. And new and disruptive business models are starting to come out all the time now because of this. And they're shifting where profits and wealth are being made and created. And as I said, commoditizing physical assets. And restructuring work and jobs, and in some cases upending entire industries. And in order to survive, businesses must adopt or adapt or lead the change, one or the other. Okay, so now that's sort of the high-level picture of the trends. I think everyone's aware of those trends, so it's nothing I'm saying that would be a surprise. It's just that, put it into perspective, to talk about the mining industry as we're some sort of exceptional case, we're not. We're just like every one of the other businesses out there who has to consider this in a big way. So mining companies are using only a fraction of their data today. That's really just an opportunity, and generally that was said that we use about 1% of the data. I think, having been in the industry, I'd say that's probably the top-end number. And then from the point of view of what we should be doing in the industry in terms of how we do our business, I just said you could pick any area of this business and you would say there's opportunities all over the place now. And it starts right from the mineral resource identification itself and through the explore, design, mine, process, sell, close, transport, and even in the areas around the social impacts and benefits. So it will run through the entire value chain of the business. And it allows that we can reduce costs, improve performance, improve safety, reduce environmental impacts, and those are the obvious ones. But we could also speed up innovation. We could also improve our societal benefits, and we could also improve the industry image. So it's sort of a plethora of opportunity. And it starts with the connected mine. I think you have to recognize that if you're not a connected mine, and then I add the word smart connected mine, but that's the starting point. If you have that, then the data itself that you're going to generate and how you use that data is really an opportunity that comes from being connected. And ultimately, like we have a smart home, we would have a smart mine at some point down the road. And then if you just looked at it from the process point of views, I mean, we could focus on any aspect of the business. Today I'll just talk more about the exploit and beneficiate side of it, not all the other areas of the business, but there are opportunities in every one. And so what are the drivers? I mean, the drivers are these technologies, and they individually, they sort of are just one aspect of it, but all of them together form the basis of really driving the overall digital transformation. They would comprise a platform if you were looking at it properly. You would not look at them in isolation, because together they are what creates the opportunity. And drive a need for more enterprise systems, because now with this connectivity, with this data sourcing, and the way that all of the business runs, really you're starting to look at this more like an enterprise than a bunch of vertical siloed functional activities. and you have to integrate them across the value chain. And will require us to develop new standards, and interoperability will be a key buzzword around how all of this gets taken advantage of. And obviously a part of it is this OT-IT convergence piece in terms of you're now bringing together your operational technology and your information technology groups. So then I would just talk about the 2 or 3, I'll say, main technologies, and very quickly, and I think most of the group probably more knowledgeable than I am about these, so I like to keep it simple. The Internet of Things, or the industrial Internet of Things, really is just all about getting the things connected, first of all, such that you can censor and collect data to analyze, decide, and act on, essentially, and that's it. And so it needs the things themselves and the sensors, it needs the network, it needs the systems to tie these together to create the solutions. And then in terms of where that sits at a maturity scale, most mines today might be somewhere around the middle of that. Some local intelligence, some software, tunable assets, some enhanced data feeds. But if you went to the far extreme, you'd be talking about additional sensors, real-time analytics, onboard execution software or edge computing, new business models and performance guarantees, because basically now you're fully aware in real time of everything that's going on about that asset or that particular piece of equipment. And so the level of maturity, somewhere, I would say, most mines somewhere in the middle, shifting towards the right. And then I think another sort of view of how, I would say we ourselves believe in this, I'm not sure everyone believes in this one, is that really the big shift we see is really around strategy and execution of strategy, and that dynamic ability to dynamically run a mine where you're essentially able to replan, reschedule, and adapt to changing market conditions, changing environments, changing internal situations, on a dime. You can either proactively identify different mining scenarios and options to sort of be out in front of any of the changing market conditions, or you could have develop on the fly your new strategy or your new plan around how you're going to make money in a bad cycle in the industry. So that, if you looked at where we are today, most miners would tell you that if the CEO came to his operations general manager say, well, metal prices fell a half overnight, like the crisis in 2008. Tell me how you're going to make money at that mine tomorrow morning. I'd like to have the new plan out on the table so we're executing it tomorrow. He'd tell you, well, call me in 6 months, because that's how long it's going to take me to replan the mine and reschedule it and resequence it and reassign the resources and all that other stuff. But actually today, the tools are out there. We're testing a lot of these tools that will allow us to do that dynamically. We can actually do replanning in sort of very rapid periods of time, minutes instead of months, and rescheduling and resequencing. And then if we close the loop between the plan and the execution, so in other words, if we're able to say, here's what we were supposed to deliver today, we track a feedback loop that says this is what we did deliver, and some things didn't quite get delivered, and we need to readjust the schedules, and then we need to reallocate the resources. That's a dynamic process. If you talked about it in manufacturing, they'd laugh at the mining industry, because they'd say, well, we've been doing that for 15 years. What are you guys talking about? And we say, no, well, we don't do that because we aren't able to do that. But we should be able to do that, and we're working hard on that concept to drive that. And I won't say it's easy, but I would say it's doable based on what we see out there today. And then I think if you just talked about, so what do we do with data? I think ultimately it's sort of moving in this direction around prescriptive analytics. Mostly today we would be doing analytics, but on a hindsight basis, not really looking forward at predicting anything. And so now we can actually predict what will happen, when it will happen, why it will happen, how do we benefit from the prediction itself, and how will these decisions impact everything else. So that is called prescriptive analytics. And it's possible to do prescriptive analytics today. So that's a whole different animal where you'd argue nobody, I don't see too many mines doing prescriptive analytics. They're just starting, I think. But the tools are there, and the data has to be good, and that's the big problem right now. The quality of data the mining industry collects and generates and sort of assembles isn't good enough yet to do this work. So we got to fix that problem, which we're working on now. Then if you said, okay, what's that look like? Well, you basically create a whole new opportunity around value. You're shifting up this whole analytics piece to a level of value creation that's quite huge. Like, you're going to get a lot of value by being able to do that work. And it's machine learning technology, I'll call it, that's driving a lot of this, that will allow us to do this, and AI. But it'll uncover all the value we leave on the table in a much more granular understanding of the value, and then we can take those insights and use that to execute the value capture. And then the digital twin is a sort of another piece of this, but essentially it's really about assets and the ability now to have a digital representation and a physical. Obviously, a physical asset exists, but a digital and a physical asset that essentially allow you to model and simulate the digital model, test, get real feedback from the physical model measurements, and fine-tune and optimize that asset performance. That concept, which is just, I think, again, just beginning, is going to have a huge impact as well. We're going to optimize pennies out of every piece of asset we have to get improvements. And that's the representation, but essentially it requires the data, the analytics and the models, and the industrial learning systems combined, and essentially allows you to put that all together, and it links the manufacturer, the designer and manufacturer, with the user of the equipment in a closed loop system, which will continually improve the design as well as continue to improve the outputs and the performance of that asset on the site. So then where's this all? So that was sort of a bunch of pieces, I'll say, of the technology that are coming together. The Germans were the ones that coined the fourth industrial revolution, and really I think it was a self-serving thing. They wanted to be the guys out in front. It was mainly the German manufacturing industry. Bosch was probably the leading manufacturer who could coin the phrase the fourth industrial revolution. And all it really is take all that assemblage of technologies, and particularly around robotics and smart autonomous robotics and this sort of intelligent system where you're using AI and machine learning, and you'll now be running your business or your plant in a much more integrated way with decisions that are optimizing your value or optimizing the performance value that you're creating from that business. That's it in a nutshell. It's a simple concept, or maybe not even a simple concept, but it's a concept. As delivering that concept into reality, I don't know that there's anybody who really has done that yet. I think the closest to it are the guys in Germany, and I think Bosch may be the leading organization in that area. So in mining, I would say, well, we're probably a long ways from that concept fully implemented. And so it does talk about horizontal integration in the business and vertical integration, and it's starting of this sort of underneath it all is the Internet of Things and the services that go along with that, and creating these smart and intelligent mines, or smart and connected intelligent mines, as the starting point, and then moving up to where you're making strategic and business decisions using data all the way to the top of the house, which is fully integrated. So your decision about one aspect of the business reflects the total business and the impacts of that decision on everything, not just that aspect of the business. Because we're looking at the business today mostly vertically. We look at exploration vertically, we look at mining and processing vertically, we look at all those things vertically. And so when people make decisions in that area, there could be sub-optimizing the business. because they don't really understand the implications of that decision on the overall business. And so that's the real horizontal piece. Technical, I wouldn't get into this other than to say that the one thing that you have to do in this new Industry 4.0, you have to figure this architecture out. And so we have been trying to figure it out ourselves, and it hasn't been easy so far, but we're starting to get a picture of it, and it's slowly coming together. But the biggest factor in this is interoperability, and how that gets done, how you connect up all these different disparate data pieces and systems and so on and so forth to do this. And then if you really got technical, it's the stack. So those guys who are in the room who are technically oriented around this, you can feast your eyes on the stack. I'm not going to cover the stack other than to say that's part of the picture you have to figure out if you're a mining company. And then go to the sort of back end of it. What's the use cases? What's the typical use cases? I think, and these are just a few, because I could list hundreds easily. I would say these are the main ones, the ones we are focused on anyways. I wouldn't say that they're the only ones. So in exploration and design, it's really about exploration targeting with big data, ore body characterization, end-to-end design optimization, which starts to get into simulation and modeling and simulation. And asset management is a big area, predictive and prescriptive maintenance, life cycle optimization, again, the digital twin, anomaly detection and correction, those are the big ones. Production and safety performance would be around real-time production monitoring, shorter interval control, hazard monitoring and control, advanced analytics for improvements, and then under the automation side, it's obviously the mining and the operational type automation that we can do, and the process automation, the back office automation, which we tend to forget about, which talked about earlier, overheads in the business. That can be automated now. Robotic process automation can take out a lot of that, what I call mundane, repetitive work. Robots and drones can carry out tasks now. We're testing drones that do surveying in the stopes and take actually autonomous drones will fly in, get the information, come back out, load it into our planning systems, update our plans and update our actuals. All that's happening in almost real time. Remote monitoring, AI-enhanced decision-making I've talked about, supply chain automation, and then under strategy, so this is kind of where the boardroom and the corporate offices probably have their big opportunity. And it's around strategy optimization, dynamic planning and execution of the strategy and the plan, tactical and operational optimization itself, and supply chain optimization. Now, optimization's been around a long time, but where it's not horizontally integrated such that you can tie together optimization from mine to process plant to selling to essentially down the entire value chain of the business. To do that in one exercise, we are now testing different optimization capability that allows you to do that as a fully integrated process right from one end to the other. And it's only because of the computing power that is out there today. For these are very complex things. If you don't realize how complex that is, but you can do it only because of the computing power today. Now you can chain together computers and they can do what used to take months and sometimes years to calculate, can be done in hours now. So that's the big change. So what's it mean for work, the future of work? Well, I think it means a lot if you're going to really make this change. It's going to mean a lot for our business. Automated equipment, remote operating centers, robotic process automation for back office automation, machine learning and AI will start to enhance decision making. I think essentially we'll still need the same skill sets and technical expertise, but they'll be doing different work. You won't be doing as much I'll call it mundane work. You'll be doing the thinking work or the decision-making work with the help of these tools. And you'll require, and it really will require us rethinking the way we organize to structure our organizations too. So, because really a lot of this work that we do today is really, a lot of it's like data collection and transactional processing of information, and you don't need to do that work anymore. Robots can do that. And new skills like data scientists, software engineers, and automation specialists, along with your experienced people in mining and processing, and you still need those people. You're going to need maintenance people in the field until a robot can go out and do the maintenance. You can automate the mining equipment pretty much, or that'll be the case in the future. But you will still need people to support that activity. Though what people are talking about, the robots pulling wrenches, so that could be the day happening too. And then what do you do with your workforce? Reskilling of displaced workers, because there's going to be a lot of that. And new talent development models to attract and retain a new workforce. So it's a lot of, as you said, it's just a technology exercise. This is a redesigning and a rethinking of the way your organization, your business runs. And the building blocks and levers to success, I would say, it's ambition level that's going to drive this. Some companies are going to say, I want to do something about digital and what we can do with it, and others are going to say, we'll watch others and we'll see what happens, and we'll do a little bit, maybe we'll do this, that. So people will pick and choose, but I think some companies will go aggressive, some companies will go slow. My sense is, though, if you go too slow, you could become obsolete in the business. So I think this kind of approach, having a clear approach, a strategy, pipeline and portfolio of projects, and a clear process of how you're going to carry them out, an organization, ownership from the top down, governance, collaboration, funding, talent, management, innovation tools, all these things are considerations. If you're really going down the journey, you really have to think through all those things. This is fun. So here's the paradigm shift. I like this one because it really sort of says, if you're really going to be a different company tomorrow that's sort of based on this digital concept, what are the things that you have to sort of shift in the way you think? Because we're running into this now. So companies really do firm-centric thinking and behavior. Really, you got to shift to an ecosystem thinking and behavior. You got to look at, you're not going to do this on your own, number one. You're going to need strategic partners, and you're going to need to figure out, you won't have the skill set to do this, so you need to work with others. Profit-oriented versus purpose-oriented, really looking now at societal benefits as opposed to just pure, shareholder value itself. You have to look at broadly. Vertical focus, as I said, would have to shift more to understanding a horizontal focus, fully integrated, end-to-end. Fragmented and siloed systems, which is again what we are today, into platform-centric organizations. So you have to build a platform essentially that allows you to do this. And that's that whole architecture thing that I was talking about and how you do that. Traditional supply chains would move more towards co-created value propositions. If you listen to the presentations, if you look at Sandvik and others, they're basically offering you, solutions. And I think the other one was interesting was the airship one. Those become co-created value propositions where risk is shared, where value creation is shared. Those are different models for than the ones we use today. Closed innovation and slow adoption has to shift to open, continual innovation and accelerated adoption and learning. So if you're really going to make this transition, you've got to kind of open yourself up to that. And then partnership focus has to shift to collaborative networks, because again, the skill sets that are required are quite many different ones that you don't have in your organization. So I just summarize it, and the wisdom of those two guys far greater than mine. But I think they were very insightful when they said those two statements. And then I think for me, the new differentiator for mining companies will likely be their ability to leverage data and successfully adopt these technological changes. If you can successfully do it, you'll be a different company. And then I think the business models, is the last piece. You can rethink the business models quite a bit once you've really figured out how this digital stuff works. So the question for mining companies is, what do you need to be good at? Because really, there's a whole ecosystem around you now that's developing that can be better at it than you are. And so how do you put those pieces together? And what do you need to be good at? So you can't be good at everything. And you look at most companies today, they try to be good at everything. They want to be good at exploration. They want to be good at mining. They want to be good at processing. They want to be good at this. They want to be good at sales. They want to be good at rehabilitation. And they try to build organizations to do all of that. And then skill sets and the ability to hold those skill sets to do all of that. I mean, in the case of Agnico, which built that company up, you get big enough and you can do it. And then as long as you can retain that talent, you can keep going. If you're a smaller company, that's probably out of the realm of possibility. That's the barrier for entry for mining companies has been, you got to have all those skill sets to do it. Now I would say that could be changing. You don't necessarily, but you have to decide what it is. What is a mining company, really, in the end? What's a mining company going to be in the future? And I don't think it's going to look like the mining companies of today. So I'll leave you with that. That's sort of a quick overview of my thoughts on it. And happy to take any questions.
Yeah, we have a question there. Please call by standing up. The acoustics in here are great.
Yeah, given what you just said about you have to decide what you want to be or need to be good at, what is what you want to be good at.
Right now, we're trying to be like every other mining company, try to be good at everything, but we're just realizing that's pretty hard. So now we're starting to think about, how do we partner or align either others that can do pieces of what we can't do well better than we can do it and figure those out. I think we'll shift over time.
Rick, you have a well-earned reputation for innovation and leading the field, which generally results in having arrows in the back. Is the market rewarding you for having that reputation?
I don't know. Probably not yet. Or, I think it's like everything else. We look like a typical mining company today, maybe. We're just trying to be more innovative. And we've created value, but I think the untapped potential is quite large yet. And I don't think, it's like anything, show me is better than sort of tell me. Show me the results. So we think there's upside for us to realize that yet. Yeah.
Okay, I think that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.